Я правильно
Well, I hope I did it right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your patience. We apologize for a bit of delay over the start of our presentation. We have a very saturated agenda today, and I would like to immediately say before I introduce our guests, I must say that two many important participants of our briefing are still on their way here. One of them knows very well what does it mean the limited capabilities. Well, we are going to wait till he joins us. We can understand his problems, not on the way here, but taking part in a similar function and very close to here me to this place is Oleksandra Tarasova from the Department for the issues of the ATO fighters of the Social Policy Ministry. She's going to join us later. Unfortunately, those two events coincided in time, so we are happy to welcome everybody and that everybody joined us here. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you our today's guests and participants in our press conference. Vitaliy Rodin, the physical therapist, a person who knows, his hands know actually what can be done in order to get back to the life those who actually found themselves committed to bed. Ms. Ulana Suprun, not only very experienced doctor, but also very important person. We're talking about volunteers and their human beings, because you know a lot about the volunteer experience of Ulana, but what she can actually propose to our domestic rehabilitation efforts, she'll tell you about that more. Lidia Butska, again, physical therapist, the physician, who knows a lot about the non-traditional medical techniques, professor, scientist, volunteer, and also two German, Sergei and Vladimir, who represent here Ukrainian Association of Disabled to soldiers. They know, and myself is Natalia Zaretska, volunteer representative of ATO Veterans Association. Today we have been united by the problem, which is everybody's knowledge actually. Once a year, today on the December 3rd, the whole society remembers this. This is the World Day of Disabled Persons. But after the war started in this country, this day has a special meaning. We are going to talk today about the soldiers and fighters who, as a result of being wounded, they have special requirements. Somebody called them the handicapped persons or disabled persons or persons with the restricted capabilities, but we understand that anyone can find himself or herself in their shoes. So I'd like to start our talk today. Mr. Sergei and Mr. Vladimir, their views regarding this problem, their experience, and their experience of their comrades in arms. Good afternoon. We represent here the Ukrainian Association of Disabled ATO Soldiers, the organization which started its activity and we were established on this year, in August actually this year. I would like to say that Ukraine is a big country and Ukraine is a great nation. But unfortunately, always we have to defend our independence in the warfare and the wars over the history of mankind, actually, of our history, have all accompanied our independence. Who are the disabled ATO soldiers? We're talking about those persons who were 100% full-fledged members of society, healthy members of society, and either they were mobilized or they volunteered to go to the front line as a result of the combat actions. A lot of harm was done to their health. They even became sometimes maimed or, they were badly hurt lost their extremities, something like that. And I believe that the country or the government has to have a special attitude towards such people, the disabled ATO soldiers, and do something for them the way they actually sacrifice their health and sometimes lives for the independence of this country. Unfortunately, not always everything is done to help this category of the people. The government has to follow the model or the example of the volunteer or the public organizations, because today the volunteers and the NGOs or the public at large are way ahead of our officials who do not do much for the benefits of those people who lost their health or independent in this country. I really regret that we do not have any officials from the Kyiv administration, because there are a lot of problems in this city of Kyiv. For example, this kind of papers that I cannot actually leave or get back to my house. Because a disabled person requires a lot of assistance. Maybe he doesn't need a kind of specific help. He needs to be provided with the possibility to somehow to leave his house, the house he lives in, and return there, or to try to find a job and can find something where he or she can apply his or her skills and abilities, capabilities. They want to do that something. And those restrictions which they have today, there's such persons, do not allow him or her to do that. It's very difficult to get into this, let's say, underground metro. I mean, not all the houses of transportation vehicles have ramps for the wheelchair ramps. I mean, that's why it's very difficult for them to move and be a full-fledged member of society. We need some officials from the Ministry of Transport or the Department of Transport, the Ministry of Social Protection. We need special programs which would be targeted to help such people. The job placement programs, in order to reintegrate them into our society today. This is a major problem faced today. Today we need to be tolerant. But it's not enough to be only tolerant. We have to provide the disabled persons to realize their needs. We not only have to be tolerant, but also very attentive. You mentioned the transport. We need some trolley buses with a low threshold, but you remember, you notice sometimes how far away from the curb they stop. And this is, kind of the issues that issue our culture of our drivers. And Lydia, you are a member of the working group under the committee, healthcare committee, which is involved in preparation of draft law on rehabilitation of people. Do you have any good news? What actually can you tell us about today? I actually can say only one thing. I'm really sorry, and I'm ashamed, like, as a physician, as a citizen of this country, that until now, actually, we have lived a lot of years not without thinking about those people who live next to us, and we still do not think much about them. When I see our houses and the entrances to the houses with transportation vehicles, I understand that there are some people who cannot either leave or get back to their houses. Neither of those facilities have the wheelchair ramps. And none of the people with the limited the capabilities or the disabled persons can actually approach the administrative buildings and visit the offices of those, authorities. I really feel very much ashamed that there are many NGOs, many public organizations which we have all over Ukraine or in this city. We did not even approach the resolution of this problem. Today, Kyiv is a barrier city. This is the country of barriers and hindrances where everyone to resolve some primitive issues. I would put it this way: when primitive issues, persons have to waste a lot of efforts and strengths in order to resolve their own problem. Because for all those years we've been sitting on our hands, we try to avoid this problem. We try not to communicate with the officials who actually slow down the resolution of the problems we face today. In what we have today, this is a lot of pain and tears, and because our souls are crying today, because those people who actually protected us and defended our country, they cannot be reintegrated in our society, the society where they have absolute laws the rights to live in, but they cannot be actively involved in resolving those tasks. And this is not some this personal task, mine or yours, but the whole. This is also ours and somebody else's problem. As regards the work of our working group, unfortunately, I cannot. Well, I understand that I cannot say anything which would be regarded as good news. I cannot say anything like that. Why? Because the matter is not associated with the fact that this process is being slowed down or there is some kind of resistance on the part of the top officials, but because those officials say that we just have to rewrite the existing laws. Though today, the only opportunity to resolve this issue or the problems faced by our country is just to say goodbye or to depart of that, outdated, obsolete and rotten system which we have today and create our own mechanism and instruments and tools. And our experience over the last 2 years demonstrated that those tools are in the hands of the community, of the experts, the volunteers who can do something about that. When we actually drop the laws on rehabilitation, when we try to decide where to channel the money for rehabilitation, which the center should be financed, or the educational establishments or any kind of centers which have to provide those services, and those services must be rendered by the professionals, experts, not the officials, not the ministers, but the associations of experts and specialists and associations of those who require those services. The veterans, the disabled persons, the persons who badly need those services. And this must be fixed, stipulated by the law, not the way it has been before. We have the experts in the remedial rehabilitation, medical therapy, rehabilitation medicine. We have an association, Euro rehabilitation, etc. We have the association of the veterans who can actually request those services and demand those terms and conditions which have to accompany those services. So we have to resolve the financial issues, pertaining to coordination of the efforts, and the officials have to take care of the task given to them by the communities through their associations or via their associations, and they have to report not to their bosses, but before those associations, before ourselves, the community who are actually the customers of those services. Actually, we have to completely change the existing laws. In other words, we have to change the principle underlying those laws. Because even if the original district administration wishes to establish some rehabilitation centers, they have to do that involving the associations of veterans and disabled persons who require only those services, different, not only ATO fighters, different disabled persons categories. Yet they have to involve those experts who will certify those centers, and they have to decide what kind of funds have to be channeled there and where to take this money. And this actually should be applied to all the centers in our country to avoid the kind of corruption, or let's say kind of do you understand that the major the problem should be decided by the expert and the customer. Yes, the patient is the number one person who actually needs that those services. He must be in the focus of our attention. Of course, the experts should be involved, because they have to. Those experts have to respect themselves. The society has to respect them, because this work, actually, his work can be the let's say the means how he makes provide the subsistence for their family. Those are the persons who can work depending how much free time he has, and he has to understand, or she has to understand, that this society takes care or thinks about his or her family to provide the subsistence for that, to have some kind of background, financial or whatever, and feel themselves like a full-fledged member of society. I can see that Sergei would like to add something. Well, I absolutely agree with the previous speaker. That today, unfortunately, the government has the complete monopoly for rehabilitation of the ATO veterans or fighters, and they cannot cope with this monopoly. I know that there are vouchers today which are not used. I mean, vouchers for the SPAR treatment, and the social protection doesn't work 100%. And if you're talking about the charity foundations and our organizations, public organizations, they do not allow us to create such rehabilitation centers. There is the PPP program, the PPP, the kind of partnerships, kind of umbrella framework agreement. They adopted this program, which is sitting in the Verkhovna Rada. It doesn't work today. Though I know there are all the opportunities. For example, in our organization, we have an opportunity to work with the top-notch experts. We have an opportunity to involve through the Western charity foundations to have the advanced equipment. We can establish rehabilitation centers of the European caliber, but we must have some kind of cooperation with the government. Unfortunately, we do not have it today, because they do not hear us, they do not see us. They only see us when they need some PR actions to take care of. We all understand that the limitations are not that big to you. You already expressed your thought what kind of problem we have in Ukraine. Your impressions, your comments on this topic.
Suprun is the director of Rehabilitation School at the Ukrainian Catholic University. The program started because in Ukraine there's lack of access for disabled and there's lack of facilities, but also there's lack of specialists. And in the West, there are specialists who are involved in rehabilitation. These are not only doctors, but these are therapists, therapists, and high-level professionals that provide services. They help people with limited capabilities, and they teach them how to move, how to adjust to environment, and this environment that is in Kiev, it lacks access. But if they have these specialists and they are not in Ukraine, if they were in place, they could help our friends that have limited abilities in order to have an access. And we wait for the change of in infrastructure. It takes time, and many buildings are old, and there's no elevators. But we can help our friends in order that they could have better access to infrastructure that changes. And in Ukraine is one of several states in the world where there's no such a profession as physical therapist and ergotherapist. And we are on the committee of the Supreme Council, and we, together with the Ministry of Social Policy, Health Ministry, we have struggled because they won't they don't want to put new professions into the classifier. And I can't explain why, because some people say directly they agree with us, but then when we are on a committee or during the meetings, they say that they don't need such specialists, that there's enough specialists in Ukraine, and some unknown reasons. But in my opinion, and in the opinion of my colleagues, physical therapists that exist in Ukraine, but they are not called as such, and ergotherapists that do not exist. But this profession would help now to help our friends with limited abilities. They can have access and to come and to their own house, to be able to work and also be involved in society. I was born in the United States, and I was raised in the West. And many friends here in Ukraine say that when they went to Europe, to the United States, they look around and they thought that in Europe and in the United States there are many disabled, because they saw them everywhere in the street. And when I came here to Ukraine, I was shocked that I didn't see those people. I was in Maidan for 3 months, and maybe I saw 3 or 4 people who were with limited abilities, physical abilities, but maybe they wanted to they wanted to come to Maidan, but they physically couldn't get there. They don't have access, and even their looks, they want to express themselves. They don't have access for this. And with my colleagues in Catholic University, we work on academic programs of physical therapy, ergotherapy, but we also will work together with our friends from the association in social programs, in order that our friends that have limited physical capabilities, ATO veterans, or have some injuries, wounds, that they could they would have access to services, and they should be people involved in society and have all the rights and access to life that other people have. Thank you. Vitaliy, you are a doctor, you are a physical therapist. Tell us, please, how about your work in this sphere. Unfortunately, but maybe not unfortunately, I'm not a doctor, because the work I do, no doctor can do. Because I worked in the sphere for 20 years, no doctor is at my level and didn't and couldn't make such a progress in the sphere to restore movements of the patient and to help a person to become healthy. I was an instructor of physical culture, then I was a medical brother, and it means that these were my positions, how my position was called, and Ministry of Health tried to destroy us. And now the profession that exists in Ukraine, those specialists with higher education, they don't want to go to public health institutions because they have higher higher education, and they don't want to work in these institutions. They say that you can't work there because you don't have special education for this. and the Coordination Council on Rehabilitation that works on the law on rehabilitation in Ukraine. This group agreed that we need a reform of rehabilitation medicine, and we should introduce new specializations, physiotherapists, physical therapy, ergotherapists. And this proposal and initiative was supported by the Minister Oleksandr Kikin and Deputy Minister Viktor Shafransky, and the Minister of Social Policy, Minister of Education, and the representatives of healthcare community. But unfortunately, some people in the ministry don't understand the importance of this issue. And we have a division under Grigorovsky, headed by Grigorovsky and Gasyuk. They block the introduction of new professions and block the reform of rehabilitation medicine. And they say that under the statistics, everything is good with rehabilitation, that we have specialists and everything works. But then they say that these changes are impossible to make. And then they say that these specializations are dead. But then they say that they should think a year or two about this. So we have such a department, such a division. And the minister says that they should do this, but the department don't want to solve this issue. They say that they have to think. I think that Ukraine fights for 2 years. We have thousands of wounded people, and blocking of blocking the reforms in this sphere can be considered betrayal of our state. We should increase the quality of services to improve the quality of health of our nation. Several words. I understand that many of our viewers don't understand the difference between medicine and rehabilitation medicine. And until now, the rehabilitation, the system, there was no system, rehabilitation system. There were some systems developed in some institutions, but there were no system as a whole. Rehabilitation is the restoration of health of the person. Restoration of health of the person after the acute phase of the disease was treated, and then we restore the internal mechanisms to self-rehabilitation and to self-renewal, and this rehabilitation can take a lot of time, and it should be started from the very first hours. So if a person is treated in the hospital, there should be a special brigade, and this should be a doctor who cures an acute phase and the rehabilitation team. It's a doctor in rehabilitation medicine, and also non-doctor physical therapist. He is not a doctor, but he is a health specialist who takes this person after the hospital, for example, the veteran of military action, and then he do everything possible to rehabilitate this person, and the ergotherapist solves a lot of issues, and we don't have such a specialist. And these are the issues of these are some psychological issues. They also work with psychologists, and the specialists help a person to adapt to social life and to develop the relationship with the relatives of the veteran, and some psychological problems that appear when a person is damaged and can feel comfortable and healthy. The person suffers psychologically, and it's also important to solve these issues. And we don't have a person who would deal with these issues. Social workers cannot solve these issues. They don't have necessary information and functions that are involved, that are included in this specialty. So we don't have a system of rehabilitation in this country, and this is our problem. And the ministry blocks, the department blocks this issue. The problem is that the first place is taken by the ministry, not the community, and not the patient. And the community should give the order to the ministry. If the ministry fails, the community decides that those people who are on these positions, that they can't occupy these positions. This is an important aspect. So they just hire those people who would do will complete the tasks that are given by the community. The ministry, they follow the orders. They do not do orders. So.
In the United States, there is a physical therapy institution, physical therapy guide. Actually, it reads that this has been established to meet the requirement of the people in the government of that country. So that was a kind of the request on the part of the people to create such let's say, an entity dealing with the physical therapy. Thank you. Actually, maybe there are some questions at this point of time because the topic, a lot is being pretty much discussed, but it has its specifics. Maybe you need some explanation or some additional information. Kyiv TV channel. So if we are talking about the physical therapists, there are none, general speaking, in Ukraine, or they do not exist on paper, so to say. This number one. Number two, what are physical therapists? Maybe we do not know what those people specifically do, how they can help, actually, what they can do about that. Physical therapists in Ukraine, there are none. There are no physical therapists in Ukraine, and those experts who graduate today, the expert in specialists in physical therapy, who have actually take care of the function of physical therapists. 54, 56 higher education establishment in Ukraine has such specialization. We do not have special curricular for training or education of such experts, and the level of education and training of such experts is very low. And just in a few cases, the level of knowledge of such people meet the requirements for such experts. They are not medical officers. They are not physicians. They are considered to be, let's say, medical officers, or they have the medical education, but they are not physicians. That's why the Ministry of Health fight us, because they believe that we would like to become physicians. No, we do not claim to become physicians. We need the medical education, but we are physical therapists. In all countries, they are not physicians. The only difference between us is that the physical therapists cannot apply pharmaceutical means, or they cannot take care of invasive methods, but whatever it pertains to the movement of people, they can actually help help it. In Canada, the United States, in the West, the physical therapists actually they study for the masters for 2 years. They also have the clinical internship. Not only they listen to the lectures, they have the basic knowledge for 4 years, anatomy, physiology, medical terminology, etc., etc., and then followed by 2 years in specializing in physical therapy. That means that they have to rehabilitate physically the patients. Where they can actually help or provide the necessary services to such persons. Those persons are not physicians. but they determined as medical personnel, but they're not physicians, but they are medics. In the West, they have to be licensed. They have to be issued special diploma or certificate to pass the necessary exams. They must be specifically involved in the clinical level. Must be licensed either by the province or the state or the federal government. In Ukraine, there are some physical therapists. Some of them actually were taught or they came through the educational programs in the West, so they can work along those lines. One of those persons is sitting next to me, but they are not considered to be physicians. They are not do not exist in the paper. They cannot work in the Ministry of Health institutions. They cannot actually work according to their profession. We can only what we can do to send a letter to the Minister of Social Policy to request to include in the professional classificator those two professions, physical therapist and ergotherapist. This is as simple as that. We already actually wrote that letter 6 months ago, and many times I tried to explain why it's badly needed. But what we need, a very simple thing, the signature under this letter, and then to send this letter to the Minister of Social Policy. They agreed to that. Minister of Education already consented to that. And actually, we have to provide everything to everything possible that the physical therapist be not only sit next to me, but they were closer next to their patients, Also, I would like to answer that question as a physician. Answering your question, what the physical therapist does and what the physician do. The physician has a very good team, headed by a physician. He has control not only of the we are talking about the physical therapist, ergotherapist, medical psychologist, just psychologist, and physical therapist. Together with the physician, they take care of the rehabilitation program. From the very first meeting when the patient is hospitalized or, let's say, attends the clinic, all the way to the date when we take care of the complete rehabilitation of this person. They work with emotion, with the movement. They restore the motion of of the body per se, of different parts of the body. They actually restore the physical capabilities of a person. The motion is the basis of the health, and this is not just the words. And the physical condition of our body actually influences all our organs, like the cardiac or the system or the neural system and the general emotional and psychological conditions. So the physical therapist is one of the major medical non-physician professions who have to work with the people. Also, I would like to give some of the examples. And maybe I'm not very much versed in the special terminology, but we have such examples. In our register, there are some ATO disabled persons, disabled fighters. We have a person from the Kiev region who came through this stroke. He was operated in a military hospital, and 30 days after that, he was dismissed from the hospital. His mother took this guy to the village in the Kiev region, and then she came back and said he feels bad, he's in a very bad condition. We actually sent him or took him to the Modus or Nodus, the regional center in Brovary. And after that treatment there, he started to sit again and slowly rise, and stand on his feet. And I can see that such persons or this person requires once every 2 or 3 years to provide active assistance to him. If the special experts do not work with such person within this period of time, this person is not going to walk. He will be committed or, let's say, to bed. confined to bed. Otherwise, there are some wounded persons who had the wounded, the damaged skull or whatever. If they lost part of their brains, they have to stimulate the remaining parts so that the remaining part of the brain perform the functions of the lost one. And in our medicine, they took the kind of infusion, something like that, dripping. Installation, and then he returns home and he doesn't have this treatment any longer. This is a kind of outcry over ourselves, over the society. The people who became emotionless, they know how much they're prepared to sacrifice to move again. So to help a person to move again, this is the task of a physical therapist. Persons who are lost because of the wound or some damage, they cannot any longer to sit or walk or write even, and they have to learn anew how to do that. And this is the task of ergotherapist. And actually, we can talk that rehabilitation, the process which helps to compensate for the negative consequences of the disease or the wound. But that was, each case is an individual case. And our task is to minimize those negative consequences. And the last very brief question, and we're going to crown it all. What is the function of ergotherapist? How he works or she works? He has to stay with the patient 24 hours per day. He helps this person to leave the house or return to let's say, embark upon the public transport vehicle, whatever. Ergotherapist is the same medical profession as a physical therapist, but not the doctor's profession. Ergotherapist, like the physical therapist, has to work with the patient from the very first day of. But the physical therapist's task is to restore motion, and the ergotherapist's task is to feel that emotion with some sense, not only to move for the patient, but actually to take care of some of the, let's say, routine tasks. For example, to dress, to brush the teeth, to go to the shop. And this is the task of the ergotherapist. He doesn't help this patient. He teaches how to do this person how to do it himself or herself. If there are some complex tasks, he thinks how to help this patient or this person, maybe to help him to do that, using some auxiliary means. And again, if the patient is to be dismissed from a hospital, ergotherapist has to go to the apartment where this patient or the house and see whether something could be in the way for the motion of this person, maybe some high threshold or the slippery tiles, or if there are enough illumination, or maybe the height of the bed is proper, or some of the furniture. This is the task of the ergotherapist. He has to adjust the environment to the needs of this specific persons, for this person to do something on his own. Thank you. I will allow myself to sum up briefly. We are talking about rehabilitation. We're talking about rehabilitation of disabled persons. And then we have a look around us and we see the world full of the different restrictions. We have architectural restrictions which are in the way of moving of wheelchair patients or those who are on these crutches, which is do not allow them to live 100% of full life. We understand that we have some kind of mental governmental restrictions. On the one hand, the official believes that he determines something, but on the other hand, we allow this person to decide or to have control. But we also know that the government is obliged to do something about that. So taking this opportunity, I would like to address every one of us present here. So we have to think every day what we can do, what we can guarantee, what we have to do. I believe that the wheelchair ramp near the house or near the pharmacy and the comfortable the trolley bus or the streetcar stop is not only somebody's responsibility, but is responsibility of each of us. Thank you, friends. This is the end of our work today. And the tomorrow's schedule will be on our website after 5 p.m. Thank you.